She was broke, hopeless, and needed a miracle to save her mother's house. He was a cold investor, used to seeing numbers instead of feelings. But in an unusual proposal, fate decided to write the most romantic story of their lives. And in the end, two extra little hearts beat strongly, changing everything forever. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. Donna stood on the front steps of her mother's house, eviction notice in hand, feeling the weight of the entire world pressing on her shoulders. The paper trembled between her fingers as she read the same words for the 10th time, all of them underscoring the same reality. She was going to lose this place if she didn't come up with the money, and soon. The clatter of neighborhood traffic sounded far away, as if the eviction letter had created its own little bubble around her, a bubble of dread and desperation. The sense of impending loss tugged at her heart. It was more than just a building. It was a safe haven where she had grown up, where her father had shared his dreams, and where her mother still tried to keep a sense of normalcy despite endless bills piling up. Donna's father had passed away only 6 months earlier, and in the chaos that followed, funeral expenses, leftover debts, overdue mortgage payments, everything had spiraled out of control. His last words still echoed in her memory. "Take care of your mother, okay?" But she hadn't managed to keep that promise, and now there was no one else to step in. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, jolting her from the dreadful haze. With a shaky hand, she answered. "Donna, are you okay?" a friend asked, concern ringing through the speaker. "No," Donna admitted. "I'm holding the eviction letter. They're serious this time." Her friend offered supportive words, advising her to contact any possible leads for a loan or a job that paid enough to meet the deadline. But Donna's mind was stuck on just one name, Victor. Her father had mentioned him in passing once, an aloof businessman who had an uncanny ability to make or break deals. Perhaps her father had hoped to partner with him someday, or maybe it was just idle talk. Regardless, it was the only thread of hope Donna had. "I'm going to see him," she blurted out, as her friend tried to speak again. "It's a long shot, but I've got to try." A little later, she approached the doors of Victor's imposing commercial building in the bustling business district. Everything about this place seemed designed to intimidate. Polished floors, mirrored walls, well-dressed professionals gliding across the lobby as if they had all the time in the world. Donna felt small, a scruffy outsider who didn't belong. Her chest tightened at the thought of explaining her dire financial straits to a man she knew only by reputation. Still, losing the house was an even scarier thought, so she steeled herself and marched to the reception desk. "I need to see Victor," she said, voice wavering. The receptionist glanced at Donna's worn jeans and the wrinkled eviction notice tucked under her arm. "Do you have an appointment?" the receptionist inquired, arching a thin eyebrow. Donna shook her head, feeling the flush creep up her cheeks. "I don't, but it's urgent." "Mr. Victor doesn't take walk-ins," the receptionist said coldly. "You can leave a message." "Please," Donna insisted. "I can't wait. This is a matter of—" She bit her tongue before finishing. A matter of life and death, she had almost said, though it felt no less dramatic. She could see in the receptionist's expression that emotional pleas wouldn't work. "Mr. Victor is a very busy man." "I'm sorry," the receptionist replied, turning her attention back to a stack of paperwork. Defeated for the moment, Donna moved aside, heart hammering. She tried to collect herself, glancing around at the men and women in suits walking purposefully through the lobby. Each time the elevator doors opened, she craned her neck, half hoping Victor might stride out. She didn't even know what he looked like. Her only clues were her father's words. "He's all about business, Donna. Frigid, but fair if you can pique his interest." That was hardly comforting, but it meant he might at least consider a proposition if she could frame it in business terms. Her phone buzzed again. She pulled it out and recognized the number of a dreaded creditor. Just the sight of it sent a chill down her spine. they'd threatened to seize the house if the payment wasn't received in 24 hours. Reluctantly, she picked up. "Donna, you have until tomorrow," the voice barked. "If the funds aren't in our account by then, the house goes up for auction." She swallowed, tears threatening to break her composure. "I just need a bit more time. I have a meeting." "You've been saying that for weeks," the creditor interrupted. "We're done waiting." When the call ended, Donna's frustration spilled over. She marched back to the reception desk. Her throat felt like it was closing up, but she forced her voice out in a trembling shout. "I have to see him. You don't understand. This can't wait." The receptionist looked aghast. "Ma'am, lower your voice." A few people nearby turned their heads. Donna realized how she must look. Eyes red, holding a crumpled piece of paper, desperation etched on her face. But she couldn't hold back. "I've got nowhere else to go," she muttered, voice cracking, feeling the tears press at the corners of her eyes. The elevator doors slid open just then, and a tall man stepped out. There was a stir around him. Some of the employees froze and lowered their gazes as he walked by. His posture was straight, his hair meticulously styled, his suit undoubtedly expensive. He moved with a quiet confidence, scanning the lobby as if everything within it were part of his domain. Then his eyes rested on Donna. She felt pinned under that cool stare, unable to look away. The receptionist started to say something, but he raised a hand. The hush that fell made the ambient hum of the lobby all the more pronounced. "What's going on?" he asked, in a tone that was neither loud nor gentle. The receptionist cleared her throat. "Sir, this woman insists on seeing you without an appointment." Donna scrambled for words. I'm sorry, but I need to talk to you. My father once mentioned you. I'm in trouble." He regarded her for a long moment, then turned to the receptionist. "Send her to the conference room. I'll be there in a minute." With that, he continued on his way, leaving Donna stunned but relieved. The receptionist stared at Donna as if trying to figure out how this scene had just unfolded so quickly. Soon, Donna found herself ushered into a sleek conference room dominated by a long glass table. City sunlight poured in from the window, reflecting off the polished surfaces. She clutched the eviction notice tightly as she sank into one of the leather chairs. The enormous clock on the wall seemed to tick louder than normal, marking the seconds of her wait. She wondered if Victor was just placating her, letting her wait in a fancy room only to dismiss her in the end. Maybe he was testing her patience, or maybe he'd simply forget about her altogether. Despite the plush surroundings, worry gnawed at her. She felt the urge to text her mother, to see how she was coping, but she couldn't bring herself to deliver more bad news. Outside the glass walls, people bustled up and down the hallway, some glancing in at her with curiosity. They must have already started whispering about the desperate woman who caused a scene in the lobby. Time ticked on, and Donna began to wonder if she should just leave. Maybe this was all a huge mistake. She looked down at the eviction letter again, the typed words formal and cold, and remembered the shaky voice of the creditor who had threatened to auction off her mother's home. There wasn't really a choice. She had to stay and see this through. She glanced at the door, half expecting Victor to stroll in. Instead, she glimpsed him in the corridor through the large glass window. He was talking to someone, a well-dressed associate perhaps, his expression unreadable but intense. At one point he nodded, then turned his gaze toward the conference room. Even from a distance there was something in the way he looked at her, a kind of curious detachment, as though he were assessing the value of a proposition he hadn't quite figured out yet. Donna felt her breath catch as she met his eyes through the glass. She set the eviction letter flat on the table and tried to calm the trembling in her legs. Victor exchanged a few final words with the person in the hallway, then took a step in her direction before pausing again. A phone rang somewhere behind him, and he pivoted away, returning to that conversation. A trickle of doubt slithered through Donna's mind. This man, with all his power and apparent aloofness, might be her last chance. But could she really rely on him? Her father's brief mention painted Victor as someone who valued profit above everything else. For all she knew, he might look at her crisis and laugh it off, unless there was something in it for him. Leaning back in the chair, she fought the urge to run out and hide from the humiliating position of begging for help. Yet the weight of the eviction letter demanded she swallow her pride. She had to try. The large clock on the wall ticked another minute. Donna sighed, tore her gaze away from Victor's tall figure in the corridor, and tried to calm the pounding in her chest. She told herself she would give him 5 more minutes before gathering her shattered dignity and leaving. The thought of going back home, telling her mother that she had failed, made tears well up in her eyes. She glanced one last time at the glass window, unable to stop herself. Victor was there, finishing his conversation. In an unguarded moment, he turned fully toward her, and their eyes locked. It was just a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity. His features were impossible to read, yet something about his posture suggested an internal debate. Then, almost imperceptibly, the corner of his mouth twitched, and he offered the slightest nod before turning away. Her heart fluttered with a flicker of hope and fear, both at once. That single gesture might mean he would come through for her, or it might mean he'd made up his mind to turn her away politely. She couldn't tell. Either way, that single look ignited a dozen new questions in her mind, questions about who this man really was and whether he could give her the lifeline she so desperately needed. From across the room she could hear muffled voices, but she couldn't make out what was being said. Everything felt tense and uncertain. She forced herself to breathe slowly, blink back the tears, and focus on the one thing that kept her going, the fading possibility of saving her mother's home. If it took waiting the entire day for him to appear, she would do it. Outside, the hum of conversations and footsteps continued as the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow across the conference room. She thought about her father again, about how he'd taught her to fight until the end. Maybe, just maybe, this was how she would honor his memory. Donna looked out the glass window, saw Victor in another corridor, noticing him throwing an enigmatic glance at her, and wondered if he was her salvation or just an illusion. Donna watched Victor slip away from the corridor window, disappearing from sight just as quickly as he had appeared. She felt torn between hope and dread, uncertain if he would return. Her nerves were frayed from waiting. The conference room's imposing silence pressed in on her, and her fingers clutched the eviction notice with increasing desperation. When the door finally opened, Victor strode in with measured steps, his expression composed. He took a seat at the far end of the long glass table, gesturing for Donna to remain where she was. The afternoon sunlight caught the dark fabric of his suit, making it shimmer faintly. He carried himself like someone accustomed to control. "Sit," he said. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. His presence alone was enough to demand attention. Donna lowered herself into the chair again, feeling the edges of the eviction letter crinkling in her hand. Before she could speak, he rapped his knuckles lightly on the table. "Explain," he said simply. "Why exactly are you here?" She swallowed. He wasn't asking out of politeness. It was a cold imperative. Gathering her courage, she laid the eviction notice on the table for him to see. "My house, the house my mother lives in, is about to be repossessed," she began. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out. "My father passed away 6 months ago, and with him gone, we were left with debts I didn't even know existed. The bank says if I don't pay the outstanding balance, they'll auction our home." Victor's gaze fell on the letter, scanning the official text without any sign of surprise or pity. He lifted his eyes back to her. "You're behind on payments, I see. So you're asking me for money?" She fought the flush creeping into her face. "I'm asking for help, yes. A loan. Or something." He leaned back, fingertips drumming on the table. "Do you have collateral? Assets? Anything of value that I could use as security?" His directness stung. She bristled, acutely aware of how her desperation must look. "No," she said quietly, dropping her gaze. "If I had anything left, I wouldn't be here." Victor studied her for a moment, seemingly unmoved. The hush in the room amplified every subtle sound, her shallow breathing, the ticking of the sleek wall clock, the hum of distant voices from the hallway. She noticed the way he looked at her, as though she were a problem to be solved, or, worse, a liability. It made her feel small. He pressed his lips together. "I don't generally engage in charity. If there's no return on investment, it's not worth my time." Her heart twisted. She was prepared for resistance, but it still hurt to hear him reduce her request to nothing but numbers. The memory of her father's hopeful mention of Victor echoed in her mind. Maybe he'd imagined a warmer man, or maybe he simply knew this was the only person with the means and the cold logic to help. She tried to keep her voice steady. "I understand, but I'm desperate. If there's a way, any way, I'd do it. I'm running out of time." He paused, tapping a steady rhythm against the arm of his chair. "Let's say I believe you. What can you offer in return? Do you have skills, connections, anything that might interest me?" Before she could muster an answer, the door opened and a young man poked his head in. "Sir," he said, looking uneasy, "the investors from overseas just confirmed their arrival next week. They want to schedule a preliminary discussion as soon as they land." Victor's eyes narrowed. "Fine. Arrange it." The man nodded, throwing a quick glance at Donna before slipping away. The interruption lifted a corner of the veil for her, revealing that Victor had pressing matters of his own. She saw the slight tension on his face and realized that something, maybe these foreign investors, was a big deal for him. When he shifted his attention back to her, he masked any sign of agitation. "You've picked an inconvenient time," he remarked. "I have enough on my plate." Donna took a slow breath. She recognized a glimmer of an opportunity. Whatever was happening with those investors, it made him uneasy. Maybe that meant he needed help in ways he wouldn't openly admit. Her thoughts spun, searching for an angle. "If you need assistance, I could—" His disinterested chuckle cut her off. "You don't strike me as someone with the tools to handle major international negotiations." "I'm not claiming to be," she retorted, more firmly than she expected. "But if you need an extra set of hands or someone who can pick up tasks you don't have time for or anything, I'll do it. Just help me keep a roof over my mother's head." He seemed to consider her words, a faint crease forming between his brows. The silence stretched again, thick with unspoken possibilities. Then he rose abruptly, smoothing a nearly invisible wrinkle in his suit jacket. "I'll think about it," he said, moving toward the door without another glance her way. She bolted to her feet. "That's it?" He paused with his hand on the doorknob, not turning back. "That's it." Then he stepped out, leaving her alone in the echo of his words. She felt stunned. After all her pleading and all the vulnerable truths she'd laid out, he offered a cold, "I'll think about it," and walked off. For a few seconds, she stayed there, too shocked to move. Finally, the door opened again, and the same receptionist who had been so dismissive earlier appeared. The woman's voice was brisk. "Miss, I'll show you out." Donna nodded numbly. It occurred to her that she had no clue whether Victor was on the verge of agreeing or if he was about to block her number and forget she ever existed. The uncertainty made her heart race, but she knew better than to cause another scene. She followed the receptionist along the hallway, back through the impressive lobby. Halfway there, the woman quietly handed her a small white business card. It bore Victor's name, printed simply, along with a direct phone number. "He said to give you this," the receptionist murmured. Her tone was distant, but Donna caught a flicker of curiosity in the woman's eyes. Donna clutched the card. "Thank you." It was something, a tangible lifeline, however thin. Victor might not have offered a guarantee, yet he'd given her a private number. That felt like a crack in the fortress of his detachment. She exited the building, stepping into the frenetic city swirl. Cars honked, Pedestrians hurried by, and the scent of exhaust hung in the air. Normally, the bustle would overwhelm her. Today, it felt like she was floating through it, only half aware of everyone around her. Her phone vibrated. The screen displayed the same creditor who had been calling relentlessly. Fear clenched in her stomach. Instead of answering, she let it ring, letting her hand fall to her side. What could she possibly say this time? She had no definitive answer, no money, no date by which she could promise payment. She spotted a nearby bench, ironically parked beside a glitzy storefront showcasing designer handbags, items she'd never be able to afford. Sitting down, she stared at the card. It was as crisp as Victor's tone, white with black lettering. She wondered what it would mean to call him, to place her fate entirely in the hands of a businessman who saw the world as one giant deal. Cars rushed by, their tires hissing against the asphalt. A teenager nearby tapped busily on his phone, oblivious to her turmoil. An older woman walked past with grocery bags, giving Donna a brief sympathetic glance as if sensing her despair. Donna wasn't sure how she must look, close to tears, eviction notice in her purse, and a card that might be her only shot at saving what remained of her family's stability. Time felt like it was slipping away so fast she could almost hear the seconds whooshing by in her head. She thought of her mother's hopeful smile whenever she offered reassurance, of her father's memory, his voice urging her never to give up. She felt the weight of obligations piling up, and no clear path to redemption. Then her gaze fell again on Victor's number. Standing, she tucked the card into her jacket pocket, pressed a hand against it for a moment, and began walking down the sidewalk. Her phone buzzed once more and she ignored it, letting out a shaky exhale. She wanted to at least make it home before facing any more demands. Yet each step she took felt heavier with the knowledge that she might not have a home for much longer. If she didn't act soon, the bank would sell her mother's house. The thought crushed her heart, spurring her forward with a frantic need to cling to any chance at salvation. She glanced at a towering clock mounted on a nearby building, tracking the time as she navigated through the crowd. With every passing minute, the risk of losing everything grew. She couldn't wait too long. The countdown had already begun the moment she'd opened that eviction letter. Yet she couldn't see a clear, foolproof way out. All she had was a card and the vaguest hope of a deal that might or might not exist. At last, she reached her small apartment building, the worn bricks starkly different from Victor's pristine establishment. She climbed the stairs, the overhead lights flickering. Inside, her living room was cluttered with reminders of unpaid bills and half-packed boxes in case the worst happened. Standing there, she gently pulled out the business card again, studying the neat script of Victor's name. Her mother would be waiting for news, but Donna couldn't bring herself to speak yet. She had no triumph to share, only a sliver of possibility. She leaned against the wall, her pulse drumming in her ears. The future felt wildly uncertain, but for the first time, there was a tiny crack of light in her otherwise dark situation. She gazed at the clock on her phone, watching the seconds roll by, each digit a reminder of how little time remained. Her thumb hovered over the call button, heart throbbing. The thought of hearing Victor's voice on the other end filled her with equal parts terror and relief. Would he actually help, or simply shut her out? Donna pressed the card against her chest, looking at the clock ticking away each second toward eviction. She wonders if she should call Victor, or if there is still any other way left. Donna paced the living room for hours, staring at Victor's business card as though it held the key to every locked door in her life. The rumpled eviction notice lay on the kitchen counter, reminding her that she could run out of time at any moment. Her mother, too worn out to confront the day's worries, had retreated to the bedroom. She trusted Donna to find a solution. That trust was a heavy burden, but it also gave Donna the final push she needed. When she dialed Victor's number, each ring shot another jolt of anxiety through her. He answered on the third ring, his voice clipped but composed. "You decided to call," he said. She swallowed, uncertain whether to apologize or jump straight to the point. I couldn't wait any longer. You mentioned that you might think of something? His pause was brief. Meet me at the Silver Crescent Hotel tomorrow, 6 o'clock. Don't be late. He hung up without further explanation. She clutched her phone, stunned but oddly relieved. At least she had a place and time. It was a crack in the wall of his aloofness, small but better than silence. The next afternoon, the hotel lobby rose before her with an intimidating elegance. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, plush carpets muffled footsteps, and a faint scent of fresh lilies drifted through the air. She was sure the cost of a single night in this place could cover most of her overdue bills. Strangers eyed her, and she tried not to let her self-consciousness show. She approached the reception desk, fiddling with the strap of her purse. I'm, looking for Victor, she said quietly, as if even saying his name in this grand environment might cause suspicion. The receptionist's expression was polite, but distant. Do you have his room number, miss? No, but he told me to meet him here, Donna replied. He's waiting for me. I see, the receptionist answered, scanning the logbook. Mr. Victor is with a guest in the lounge area upstairs. Please take the elevator to the second floor. Donna murmured a thank you. Her stomach fluttered as she stepped into a gold-trimmed elevator. The closer she got, the more she dreaded what she might find. Was this a private meeting for business or some grand social affair? She hardly knew the man, and yet here she was. When the doors slid open, she emerged into a corridor lined with large framed prints of city skylines. Halfway down, she noticed an ornate sign pointing toward the executive lounge. She turned the corner and gasped at the view. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the cityscape in the early evening glow. Plush chairs, marble tables, and discreet servers weaving in and out with silver trays completed the upscale picture. Scanning the room for Victor, Donna felt out of place among the suited patrons sipping expensive drinks. Finally, she spotted him at a table near a window, deep in conversation with a man in a navy blue suit. The man had thinning hair and an air of practiced authority, perhaps a bank representative, she guessed. Before she could gather the courage to approach them, someone brushed past her, forcing her to stumble. She bumped into a tall man with a smug grin and too much cologne. "Whoa there," he said, chuckling as he steadied her with an intrusive hand on her arm. "You look a bit lost. Do you belong here, sweetheart?" Her cheeks warmed with irritation. "I'm fine, thank you." She pulled her arm free, trying to be polite yet firm. He didn't take the hint. "You meeting someone special?" His tone carried a leering edge that made her skin crawl. "You know, if you're looking for work, there are easier ways to make cash than hustle in these fancy places." Donna's breath caught in her throat. She understood his insinuation, and it made her blood boil. "Get out of my way!" she snapped, raising her voice more than intended. His eyes narrowed. "Watch your mouth. I'm just offering helpful advice." Donna bristled. "I don't need your advice." He let out a short laugh that drew attention from nearby tables. "Feisty. I like that." She stepped back, her heart pounding. A few servers paused, uncertain whether to intervene. Donna clenched her fists at her sides, aware that every second spent dealing with this creep brought her closer to making a scene. She hated causing disruptions, especially in a place like this, but she wouldn't tolerate insults. "Please leave me alone," she said, forcing calm into her voice. The man took half a step closer, still smirking. "You sure? I can be generous." Donna's fury surged. She was about to push him away when someone else spoke up. "She said leave her alone." Victor's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Donna exhaled shakily in relief. Victor stood there, tall and composed, his gaze as cold as the glass walls around them. The unwelcome stranger's smirk faltered, but he tried to hold his ground. "This a friend of yours?" he asked, eyeing Victor's tailored suit. Victor didn't bother answering. He fixed the man with such an uncompromising stare that even a fool would think twice. After a brief standoff, the man raised his hands in mock surrender. All right. Didn't know she was spoken for," he said sarcastically. Donna bristled at the suggestion but kept quiet, letting Victor handle it. The man slinked away, muttering curses under his breath. The onlookers returned to their private conversations, the lounge's decorous hush settling over the brief scene. Victor turned to Donna. "You're late," he said tersely, though he made no comment on her unwanted admirer. He jerked his head toward the table where the navy-suited man was waiting. "I'm in the middle of a meeting. Come on." She followed Victor, her cheeks still hot. Embarrassment lingered in the wake of that confrontation, but also a flicker of gratitude that Victor had stepped in. Then again, he had hardly done so out of chivalry. It was more like he simply wanted to remove a nuisance from his path. They reached the table. The man in navy blue greeted them with a polite nod, then gave Donna a curious look. "Donna," Victor said, gesturing vaguely in her direction. "She's assisting me with certain tasks. We can trust her." She felt a flash of surprise that he would describe her that way, but decided to keep her questions in check. For now, she'd play the role he set. "I'm Garvey," the man introduced himself, offering a handshake. "Victor's mentioned some upcoming plans, large-scale investments. Are you part of those plans?" Donna hesitated, acutely aware that Victor's gaze was on her. "In a way," she answered carefully. "I'm helping where I can." Garvey didn't pry further. "Excellent." He turned to Victor. "The bank wants to ensure all documents are ready for the overseas investors. They'll likely want proof of stability, of strong domestic ties. If they sense any hesitation, it could derail everything." Victor nodded, speaking in clipped tones about deadlines and rates. Donna listened, trying to piece together the significance of each detail. She realized this was a high-stakes negotiation, one that could make or break Victor's reputation. Perhaps it was why he seemed more on edge than usual. When Garvey excused himself to gather some documents from his briefcase, Victor folded his arms and leaned back. His gaze flickered over Donna briefly, as if evaluating her all over again. "I see you've caused more of a stir," he remarked, not unkindly but hardly sympathetic. She lowered her eyes. "Sorry about that." He shrugged. "Forget it. That man was out of line. But incidents like these follow you, don't they?" He watched her reaction closely. "I'm not sure I follow." He didn't elaborate, just checked his watch. "Listen, we don't have much time. If you want my help, I might have a way. It requires you to follow instructions, no questions asked." She shifted in her seat. "I'll do what needs to be done, as long as it's not illegal." Her attempt at humor emerged tense and thin. A ghost of a smile tugged at the corner of Victor's mouth before disappearing. "We'll see." Just then, Garvey returned with a folder. He placed it on the table, explaining that final signatures would be needed by the end of next week. The bank would have the capital prepared, pending a confirmation that Victor's personal life was stable enough to impress the foreign investors. Words like domestic reliability and family environment were tossed around with disconcerting casualness. Donna caught Victor's eye as Garvey spoke, wondering if that mention of family environment had anything to do with the strange vibe she sensed from him. The idea rattled her. She'd come here looking for a lifeline for her own problems, yet it seemed Victor needed a certain image to seal his business deals. Was that the help he'd been hinting at? Garvey rose to take a phone call, leaving them alone for a moment. Victor tapped his fingers on the table, deep in thought. Finally, he looked at her. "I've told you I don't do charity," he said quietly, "but I find you interesting, and your sense of urgency could be useful. Perhaps we can work something out." Donna tilted her head, confusion mingling with cautious hope. "I don't understand what that means." He never got the chance to clarify. Garvey stepped back to the table, phone in hand, nodding at Victor. "I need to speak with you in private, if you don't mind." Victor stood, Give me a moment." He gestured for Donna to remain seated, then stepped aside with Garvey, the two of them leaning in to discuss something in low voices near the window. She glanced around the lounge, still unsettled by her earlier confrontation. Despite the polished surroundings, everything felt precarious. Victor was the only shot she had, but he was a puzzle, a man calculating gains, calm in the face of chaos, and completely unreadable in his intentions. After several minutes, the men returned. Garvey excused himself entirely this time, offering Donna a courteous nod before leaving. Victor grabbed his briefcase, then met her eyes. "Let's go." She followed him out of the lounge, navigating the corridor's intense silence. As they approached the elevator, she could feel the rhythm of her heart pounding harder. She wanted to ask him outright what he meant by useful, but nerves kept her quiet. Besides, he walked with such resolve that she doubted he'd give her any answer she could easily accept. In the lobby, just as they reached the revolving doors, Victor's phone rang. He took the call, stepping to one side to speak. Donna lingered a few paces away, trying not to eavesdrop, but his voice carried enough for her to catch a fragment of the conversation. "If she accepts, the contract is sealed," he said into the phone. "Yes. No. I haven't given her the details yet." Donna's pulse spiked at the word contract. She swallowed, eyes fixed on the polished marble floor, her imagination racing. Whatever Victor was discussing, it involved her, and she had no idea what it entailed. He ended the call and slid the phone into his pocket. Without looking up, Donna could almost feel the questions swirl around them. It was as if the door to a new and dangerous path had cracked open, tempting her with salvation while filling her with dread. She wondered what kind of deal would make a man like Victor speak in hushed tones and vague phrases, and, more importantly, whether she truly wanted to be part of it. Donna walked home with the echo of Victor's phone call still buzzing in her mind. He'd said, "If she accepts, the contract is sealed," without elaborating. The whole cab ride back, she replayed his words, trying to guess what sort of bargain he intended to put before her. She pictured him, with his cold gaze and quick calculations, concluding that somehow she could be useful. The thought gave her chills, and yet also stirred a flicker of hope. Early the next morning, while her mother dozed in the adjacent room, Donna stared into her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles underscored her eyes, and tension tightened her face. She touched the tips of her hair, recalling how not long ago her biggest worry was whether she'd passed an exam or if her father would let her borrow the car. Now she was facing eviction, harassed by creditors, and about to do what exactly? Make some dubious deal with a man who saw life as a transaction? Her phone chimed just then. A text from Victor, surprisingly succinct. "Meet me at my office, 10 o'clock. She closed her eyes, trying to still her racing thoughts. If this was the only way, she had to do it for her mother's sake. At 9:30, she stood outside the skyscraper that housed Victor's office. Suit-clad professionals hurried across the polished lobby. She fidgeted with the sleeves of her sweater, feeling out of place. A guard behind a security desk cast a suspicious glance in her direction, but she lifted her chin and advanced toward the reception area, determined not to crumble under their judgment. The receptionist, the same one who'd once brushed her off, didn't hide her surprise when Donna approached. With a curt nod, the woman directed Donna to a sleek elevator bank. Up it went, floor after floor, until it opened onto a corridor that smelled faintly of fresh paint and money. People moved purposefully along the hallway, pausing only to greet one another with clipped smiles. Donna found Victor's office at the end. His assistant, a serious-looking man with wire-rimmed glasses, welcomed her without the courtesy of a smile. "He's expecting you," was all he said. She stepped into a spacious corner office filled with sunlight. Floor-to-ceiling windows gave a sweeping view of the city skyline. Victor was there, framed by the glass behind him, standing with his back straight and his posture almost too composed. Papers were arranged on a glossy wooden desk, and a leather chair faced him, clearly meant for her. "Sit," he said. His voice was even, neither warm nor harsh. She lowered herself into the chair. The cityscape glinted in the background, making her feel small. He took a seat opposite her, hands steepled as though prepared to conduct a board meeting. And in a sense, he was. Only this was a meeting about her life. "I assume you've guessed," he began, each syllable clipped and precise, "that my interest in your predicament isn't purely altruistic." Donna let out a shaky breath. "I figured." He opened a folder, glanced at some paperwork, then set it aside. "I'm on the verge of closing a major deal. Foreign investors, traditional, conservative. They want to see a stable man with strong domestic ties, preferably a man who's settled down or at least close to it. A happy home life, they call it." She stared. "You mean they want to see you married?" A faint flicker of annoyance crossed his features. "It's not that explicit, but it's how they operate. They believe a man with a partner, someone who appears rooted, makes for a more trustworthy investment. My single status has raised concerns." Her heart thudded. The premise sounded surreal. "So you're saying you need a fiancé?" He paused, eyes scanning her face. "Precisely. A fiancé who can be convincing enough in front of them, attend events by my side, charm them with talk of our supposed future. Then, once the deal is done, we part ways." The breath caught in her throat as the implications hit. She felt a surge of incredulity at the scale of the farce he was proposing. "That's insane." His gaze remained steady. "I'm willing to make it worth your while. I have resources. Enough to settle your debts, ensure your mother's house is secured. I can save you from eviction. In return, you'll act as my fiancé until this investment is finalized." She stood so abruptly that the leather chair scraped the floor. "You want me to lie? Pretend to be in love with you just to fool some investors? Do you realize how humiliating that is?" Victor leaned back, folding his arms. "It's business. They have their traditions, and I have my needs. I didn't say you'd need to do anything immoral, only to wear a ring, attend a few functions, and play the part of someone about to marry me." She pressed her lips together, anger sparking in her chest. "Why me?" His stare was unwavering. "You're desperate enough not to back out, and I trust desperation more than I trust shallow ambition. You also have a certain resilience I admire. I suspect you'll be discreet." A storm of indignation and disbelief swirled inside her. She hated that he was right about the desperation. She hated that he was using it against her. Most of all, she hated that she saw no other path forward. He continued in a level tone as though reading her mind. "I will draft a legal agreement ensuring your mother's house is safe. In addition, you'll receive a sum of money upon successful completion of our engagement. You'll be able to pay off all outstanding debts, maybe even start fresh." She turned away, looking at the dazzling skyline. For so long she'd been battling a storm of bills, threats, and heartbreak. This was her lifeline. But it was also a lie, a performance. Could she face her mother afterward, knowing she'd sold her integrity for the house? His voice softened a notch. "I'm not forcing you. This is your choice." Donna clenched her fists, tears pricking at her eyes. The thought of her mother losing everything weighed heavily on her, and though the idea of playing fiancé to a man who treated life like a ledger made her stomach churn, it was the first real offer of salvation she'd had. She turned around, shoulders rigid. "You said I have a choice, but we both know I don't. My back's against the wall." Victor tilted his head, conceding the point silently. She studied his face for any glimmer of empathy. He gave nothing away. "This is absolutely crazy," she muttered, more to herself than to him. "What if something goes wrong?" "That's a risk we'll manage. I'm meticulous, and you'll benefit substantially, so try not to overthink it." She swallowed her pride and glanced at the folder on his desk. "Do you have the contract now?" He shifted as if he'd expected a longer fight. "I have preliminary paperwork." but we don't need to finalize the details this second. Think about it for a day or two." She shook her head. "The eviction date is practically here. I don't have days." He met her gaze. "Then decide now. Either walk out that door and hope for a miracle, or stay, and we'll seal the arrangement." Donna felt her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Her entire body trembled with the enormity of the choice. Nothing about this was right. Yet, the prospect of letting her mother lose their home was worse. She drew a shaky breath. "I can't just snap my fingers and pretend we're about to get married. This kind of farce, it's not me." His expression remained cool. "Trust me, it's not me either. But I do what I must." She squeezed her eyes shut, remembering her mother's frail sigh of relief each time Donna promised it would all be okay. Remembering the piles of overdue bills, remembering the helplessness she felt when reading the eviction notice. In that moment, she realized that sometimes survival involved decisions that challenged one's sense of right and wrong. "Let me see the contract," she said quietly, her throat dry. "I need to understand what I'm getting into." He nodded once, sliding the folder across the desk. She opened it, scanning the lines. Legal jargon about confidentiality, mutual cooperation, and financial clauses jumped out at her. And there, neatly spelled out, was the promise of enough money to settle her debt and secure the house. Her hand shook so badly she had to set the pages down. She released a bitter laugh. "So that's how it is. Just sign on the dotted line, and you'll be my fiancé, in name only." Victor watched her calmly. "When the investors are satisfied, we'll dissolve the engagement. You walk away with no more debts. I expand my business. It's straightforward." Donna shoved the papers back toward him and walked to the window, heart racing. She rested her forehead against the glass, staring at the city below. For a moment, she imagined herself in a wedding dress, her mother's tears of joy overshadowed by the knowledge that it was all pretend. The notion made her stomach churn. She spun around to face him. "It's not just about the contract. It's about lying to everyone. My mother, the investors. I can't believe this is happening." He closed the folder. "You have time to think," he repeated. She took a shaky breath, her mind swirling with conflicting thoughts. Then she scooped up her purse and strode to the door. "I'll let you know," she managed before stepping out into the hallway. All the way home, she wrestled with her conscience. By the time she reached her apartment, she was no closer to a decision. But the images of her mother's fearful eyes and the bank's relentless demands refused to leave her head. With trembling hands, she pulled out her phone and dialed Victor's number. Her heart hammered as it rang. When he picked up, she spoke in a whisper, as if saying it too loudly would seal her fate. "I'm in," she said, "but I have conditions of my own." His voice came through the line, low and calm. "We'll talk tomorrow, early." Donna lowered the phone, tears burning her eyes. She had made her choice, stepping onto a path that felt more like a tightrope over an abyss. But for better or worse, it was a path leading away from eviction, from defeat. She just hoped it wouldn't lead her into a greater disaster. She ended the call, the weight of her decision making it hard to breathe. Donna sat at her tiny kitchen table the next morning, a delicate cup of tea trembling between her palms. She tried not to dwell on the decision she'd made, but it kept invading her thoughts. Across from her, her mother quietly studied a stack of bills. The tension in the air felt so thick that every small sound, the shuffle of papers, the soft clink of the spoon, seemed magnified. Her phone buzzed. Seeing Victor's name flash on the screen made her throat tighten. She excused herself and slipped into the hallway. "Hello?" "Be ready in an hour," he said. "I'm sending a car." "Wait, for what?" she asked. "You need proper clothes, etiquette coaching. We have an event this evening and you need to look convincing." The call ended before she could say another word. Donna stared at the silent phone, trying to calm the flutter of anxiety in her stomach. How was she supposed to act like a perfect fiancé by dinner time? She forced herself to swallow her doubts. After all, she'd agreed to this crazy arrangement. She couldn't back out now. When she returned to the kitchen, her mother set aside the bills with a curious expression. "Who was that?" "Just someone from work," Donna lied, her voice catching slightly. A pang of guilt struck her, but she pushed it away. "I have a new project." Her mother tried to smile. "Well, that's wonderful. I hope it pays well." Donna forced a weak grin and nodded. "It might. With luck, it'll solve a lot of our problems." Outside, a sleek black car arrived right on time. The driver, a quiet man in a dark suit, opened the door for her. She tried to settle into the leather seat without feeling too conspicuous. They drove across town, weaving through wide boulevards and past upscale boutiques. Eventually, they arrived at a high-end shopping district, the kind of place she'd normally walk right past without daring to enter. The driver escorted her into a spacious salon where a poised consultant in a crisp blouse appeared. "Miss Donna, I'm Juliet, your style advisor. Mr. Victor has asked me to assist you." Donna glanced around, wide-eyed at the racks of designer gowns and tailored suits. "Assist me in what exactly?" "Building your image." Juliet's tone was friendly but professional. "We'll pick outfits suitable for the role you're about to play. I've been informed you'll be attending business dinners, events, possibly even a formal gala. We must ensure you're dressed to impress." Donna's cheeks heated. She managed a nod. A small voice in her head told her this was what she'd signed up for, being molded into the perfect fiancé in a matter of hours. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of measurements, fabric drapes, and hushed consultations. Juliet pulled dress after dress, testing colors and cuts. Donna found herself pinned, turned, and examined under bright lights, until at last the consultant settled on a sleek navy cocktail dress and a refined cream blazer that felt both elegant and safe. By the time she emerged, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. A subtle transformation in her hair, a soft, sophisticated updo, and light but skillful makeup made her look grown up in a way she'd never seen before. Juliet grinned. "Now you're ready." Donna wasn't so certain. She felt like she was wearing a costume, not just clothes. But she had no time to protest. The driver returned, and soon she was on her way to Victor's office. He greeted her in a private conference room, eyes scanning her from head to toe. For a moment, his impassive mask slipped. Something like approval crossed his features. But then it vanished, replaced by that familiar coolness. "Good," he said. "We're expected at a formal dinner tonight. My foreign investors will be there along with a few potential local backers. You need to be polite, charming, and above all, convincing." She glanced at the reflection of herself in the glass walls, remembering what Juliet had told her about posture and grace. "Fine," she managed. "What exactly do I say?" "Very little," he replied. "They'll ask typical questions. How we met, our wedding plans, our future. Keep your answers simple and aligned with what we discussed. Use the story. We met through a mutual friend, we've been dating for several months, and we're planning a small ceremony next year." Her chest tightened. She'd told lies before, small ones to avoid hurting her mother's feelings or to brush off a pushy coworker. But a lie of this magnitude felt like stepping onto a stage with no script. "I'll do my best," she said. He tapped his phone, distracted by a new email. "That's not enough. We can't just fool them for a single evening. They'll expect continuity. You need to appear at my side for the entire negotiating period." She swallowed. The seriousness in his voice reminded her how high the stakes were for both of them. "I understand." He gave a curt nod, then glanced at his watch. "Let's go. We're already behind schedule." The restaurant was in a lavish hotel downtown. A grand lobby led to a private dining room draped in elegant lights. Soft music played while waiters in crisp uniforms hovered discreetly. Victor guided her inside, a hand on the small of her back. It felt staged, but to the onlookers they must have appeared as a sophisticated couple entering the room. A handful of well-dressed men and women stood or sat around a large, ornate table. Conversations paused as they arrived, eyes turning with interest toward the pair. Victor introduced Donna with a gentle clasp of her hand that made her heart jolt. She forced a smooth smile, nodding politely at each investor. Throughout the meal, Donna tried to follow the etiquette advice she'd been given. Speak only when asked, maintain eye contact, and look engaged even if the topic was over her head. At one point, a suited businessman asked how she felt about Victor's demanding schedule. She recalled the storyline they'd rehearsed. "He's busy, but we make it work," she said. "We treasure any moment we can find together." Victor caught her eye, his face expressionless. For a split second, she wondered what he thought of her performance. Did he see her as a convincing actor, or a partner in a strange play? The question lingered without an answer. They made it through the entree without disaster, but just as dessert arrived, a minor mishap occurred. One of the investors, a tall man with a strong accent, congratulated them on their engagement. Flustered, Donna clutched her wine glass too tightly and nearly dropped it. Victor reacted with lightning speed, steadying her hand before the glass could tip over. His hand remained on hers for a moment longer than necessary, an odd rush of warmth passing between them. "You're okay?" he asked in a low voice close to her ear. She nodded, heart thumping. "Yes, sorry." He eased back into his seat, face schooled into calm composure. The rest of the table continued chatting as if nothing had happened, but Donna felt a deep flush creeping up her neck. The closeness of that moment lingered, confusing her already frazzled emotions. By the time dinner ended, she was both exhausted and relieved. The investors seemed satisfied, smiling and promising to continue discussions. As they filtered out, Donna and Victor were left standing near the doors. He quietly thanked her, his voice holding the faintest hint of approval. "You did well." She let out a small breath of relief. "I'm just glad nothing else went wrong." He guided her out into the main hallway. This was only the beginning. There'll be more meetings, more scrutiny. They'll want to meet again soon, possibly in more intimate settings. Donna recalled his words about how critical it was to maintain the appearance of a loving, stable couple. The magnitude of the role weighed on her. "I'll keep practicing," she said, half joking. They stopped by a wide window overlooking the shimmering city. Victor glanced at her, then shifted his attention to the lights below. "Our story has to be consistent, not just for the investors, but for anyone watching. That means your friends, your family, they'll all need to believe it too." Her mother's questioning eyes floated into her mind. How could she explain this sudden influx of expensive clothes and secret engagements? Her heart sank. "I'll handle it." He nodded, turning to face her. "We should go now. I'll walk you out." In the car, the silence pulsed with unspoken truths. Donna thought about her mother waiting at home, phone calls from debt collectors, the swirl of confusion over whether she was doing the right thing. Yet the deal was already in motion. She might as well leap in with both feet. When they reached her apartment, the driver parked discreetly on the curb. Victor looked out the window, expression unreadable. "We'll meet tomorrow to finalize more details. Don't forget, everything depends on our ability to convince them we're truly a couple." She gripped the door handle, steadying herself. "I understand." He exhaled slowly, then his voice took on a firmer note. "If we want to convince the investors, we need to live like a real couple." Donna felt her heart pound at the notion. Donna sat in a quiet corner of Victor's expansive living room, feeling like a misplaced piece of furniture. The transition from her modest apartment to his sleek penthouse had happened so quickly that she barely remembered packing her things. She gazed out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city below, lights glittering in the evening haze. It was breathtaking, a view normally reserved for people with more money and influence than she'd ever imagined. Now it was part of her daily life, or at least the life she was pretending to have. A discreet team of movers had delivered her suitcases earlier that day, placing them in a guest bedroom that was only slightly smaller than her entire old apartment. She felt uncomfortably aware that to everyone else it might seem romantic for a couple to share a single luxurious master suite, but she had insisted on separate sleeping arrangements whenever possible. She and Victor agreed it was best to keep up appearances only when there was a threat of prying eyes. Still, it made the whole arrangement feel more like an elaborate play, with them as unwilling actors. She heard Victor's footsteps before she saw him, that confident stride echoing off polished floors. He emerged from the hallway dressed in a crisp shirt, sleeves rolled just enough to hint that he was winding down from a busy day. He glanced at her suitcase, left half unpacked near the couch. "You might want to finish settling in," he said quietly. "We have a gala to attend tonight, another chance to showcase our so-called relationship." Donna set aside her teacup, trying to mask the apprehension fluttering in her stomach. "Already? You mentioned there'd be events, but I wasn't expecting something this formal so soon." He walked toward the windows, hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on the skyline. "The investors arrived earlier than planned. If they see we're not on solid footing as a couple, they could doubt my stability. And if they doubt me, the deal might collapse." She stood and crossed her arms, unsettled by the undercurrent of tension in his voice. "I'll be ready," she replied, though her voice wavered. "We'll do what we have to do." A hint of approval flickered in his eyes. "A car will pick us up at 8. Wear something elegant but comfortable enough for a long evening. There'll be photographs, so be prepared." He stepped away to make a phone call, leaving Donna to wrestle with her mounting anxiety. She forced herself to finish unpacking, draping her new dresses and shoes in the massive closet. Its mirrored doors made the space seem endless. Each reflection reminded her she didn't truly belong in these opulent surroundings. In the early evening, she found herself in the master bathroom, rummaging through unfamiliar lotions and hair products that some stylist had arranged for her arrival. With shaky hands, she attempted the updo she'd been taught, twisting and pinning until it looked passable. Then she slipped into a deep emerald gown, sleek fabric that clung to her curves and fanned out gently at the ankles. As she studied her reflection, she couldn't help feeling like an imposter in a fairy tale costume. But there was no turning back. When she emerged, Victor was waiting by the door in a tailored suit. He looked her over with the same careful scrutiny a critic might give an art piece. "That'll do," he said quietly, offering his arm. She fought the urge to roll her eyes, reminding herself of the bargain that had forced them both into this uneasy alliance. They descended in the private elevator, stepping into a chauffeured car that whisked them through the city's pulsing streets. Donna stared out the window, watchful of how Victor silently tapped at his phone, checking messages or finalizing business details. She longed to ask him if he ever felt guilty, but she suspected he'd only see it as another transaction. They arrived at a grand hotel where spotlights cut through the dusk. A red carpet ran along the entrance, flanked by photographers who snapped pictures of arriving guests. The scene buzzed with excitement. Men in tuxedos, women in shimmering gowns, murmuring conversation and camera flashes. Donna's heart pounded as the driver opened her door. Victor stepped out first, extending a hand to help her from the car. She managed a poised smile, hooking her arm through his. Inside, a vaulted lobby led to a large ballroom aglow with chandeliers and filled with the melodic hum of a string quartet. Tables draped in white linen bore lavish centerpieces. Waiters, dressed in black, wove gracefully among the attendees, offering drinks and hors d'oeuvres. Donna forced a polite smile, feeling each curious eye lingering on her and Victor. She sensed them sizing up his supposed fiancée. Every glance whispered a question. Who is she? Does their love story ring true? They navigated the room, exchanging polite nods and handshakes. She tried to keep her posture regal, remembering the etiquette tips she'd been given. The pressure to appear adoring was a strange weight. Victor occasionally leaned in to whisper a remark or guide her away from certain conversations. They chatted with a small group of foreign investors, some of whom had flown in from Europe. Donna nodded and smiled, feigning familiarity with names she barely recognized. Midway through the evening, a swirl of lights and cameras near the ballroom entrance signaled fresh arrivals. The press had managed to slip into the fringes, capturing glimpses of the city's elite. As Victor and Donna made their way along one side of the room, a man with a camera lunged forward to snap photos. Caught off guard, Donna stepped back, colliding with a passing waiter. Glasses of sparkling wine toppled from the tray, crashing to the floor in a cascade of broken crystal and golden liquid. A hush fell, drawing every gaze in their direction. Victor reacted quickly, steadying her before she could trip over the shards. The waiter apologized profusely, but Donna felt the heat rush to her cheeks. A paparazzo took advantage of the moment, capturing frames of her clinging to Victor's lapel with wide eyes. There were murmurs among the guests, some concerned, others merely curious. With as much dignity as she could muster, she let Victor's arm slide around her waist and pretended everything was fine. "I'm so sorry," she said quietly, her voice shaking. "It's all right," he said, in a tone too soft for the onlookers. Louder, for the cameras, he turned it into a reassuring murmur and pressed a light kiss to her temple. The action was so unexpected that she stiffened, but she understood it was for show. The paparazzi snapped away, capturing what they likely assumed was a tender moment between a doting couple. The rest of the gala continued without any more embarrassing incidents, though Donna's nerves remained frayed. They chatted with more investors, making careful references to their future plans. She tried to seem sincere, and Victor matched her responses as though they'd rehearsed them. By the end of the night, her cheeks ached from smiling. When they finally escaped to the relative privacy of a corridor outside the ballroom, Donna let out a shaky breath. Victor loosened his tie, looking just as drained, though he maintained his controlled poise. The paparazzi had already posted up near the exit, capturing the departing guests. She could see the camera flashes through the tall windows. He glanced at her with a flicker of concern. "You did well. No lasting damage." She gave a humorless smile. "Almost broke my ankle in the process, but sure, everything's peachy." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so no one else could hear. "It's a small price to pay if the investors are impressed." Then he paused, as if unsure whether to add anything further. "Thank you for handling the situation." A swirl of conflicting emotions passed through her. She resented this arrangement, yet part of her felt oddly relieved that he'd acknowledged her efforts. When they left through the main entrance, cameras flashed again. Victor squeezed her hand gently for the benefit of the photographers, and she responded by leaning into him, a scripted warmth passing between them. In the car ride home, neither spoke for the first few minutes. The city lights raced by in a blur. Donna, gazing out the window, was overwhelmed by everything that had happened. The forced smiles, the prying lenses, the near disaster with the waiter. It felt surreal, like she'd stepped into a role too big for her. Finally, she cleared her throat. "Does this get any easier?" Victor ran a hand through his hair. "Handling the public eye? It might, over time." She caught the note of weariness in his voice, and for a moment she wanted to ask if he was tired of this constant charade. But she suspected he wouldn't open up, even if she did. Instead, she lapsed back into silence, thinking about how just a few days earlier she was scrambling to avoid eviction, and now she was stumbling in front of cameras, playing fiancé to a man who treated life like a business contract. When they reached the penthouse, a subdued hush greeted them. She kicked off her heels, massaging her sore feet, and he loosened his collar. The clock on the wall showed it was nearly midnight. A swirl of city lights glowed through the windows, illuminating their silhouettes. She gathered her nerve. "I guess we'll be front-page news tomorrow, thanks to my clumsiness." He shrugged, fatigue evident in his eyes. They'll talk for a day or two. Then something else will take their attention. She wanted to believe that, but she also recognized that with each public appearance the risks multiplied. Any slip could reveal their deception, and the whispers would spread like wildfire. The weight of the ruse pressed in on her as she realized how often they'd have to play this game. With a murmured good night, she retreated to the guest bedroom where an immaculate bed waited beneath soft lighting. As she removed her earrings and laid them on the nightstand, her reflection in the mirror felt like a stranger. She wasn't sure when she'd lost her sense of normalcy, maybe from the moment she accepted his contract, or maybe even earlier, when that eviction notice first arrived. Either way, she couldn't turn back. She wondered if Victor felt any real emotion during that split second on the ballroom floor when he'd acted protective and pressed that kiss to her temple. Or was it just another move to convince the paparazzi? Trying to banish the thought, she sank onto the bed, too drained to think clearly. Despite her exhaustion, sleep didn't come easily. She kept replaying the night's events, the bright flashes, the stares, the hush that followed her collision with the waiter. Beneath that, a nagging feeling told her that Victor was carrying more baggage than he let on. His manner was controlled, but she'd seen tiny cracks in his composure. They hinted at fears or secrets beyond just wanting to fool investors. Long minutes stretched into hours before she finally surrendered to a restless slumber. Her last conscious thought was that she barely knew the man whose ring she wore in public. She realized that if they were going to keep this up, she had to learn more about him, whether he allowed it or not. Donna feels that Victor is hiding something beyond the simple fear of being discovered. She wonders what other secrets might exist behind that closed man. Donna woke the next day to faint clinks of cutlery and soft, muffled footsteps in the penthouse hallway. She rolled over, momentarily forgetting where she was, then remembered she was in Victor's guest room, her new home for as long as their charade continued. Her first conscious thought was that the previous evening's gala had been exhausting, smiling for cameras, fielding questions, pretending to be blissfully in love. All of it had left her with a tangled knot of tension beneath her ribs. She rose from the bed and padded to the closet, selecting one of the tailored outfits that had been arranged for her. The mirror reflected a subdued nervousness in her eyes. She couldn't shake the feeling that this entire arrangement was perched on an invisible fault line. Victor might have wealth and power at his disposal, but it felt like there were pieces missing from the puzzle of who he really was. After dressing, she stepped into the corridor, following the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee. The penthouse looked as pristine as ever, chic, minimal furnishings and gleaming surfaces. In the kitchen, she found Victor standing at the counter, talking quietly on his phone. He wore a tailored shirt, sleeves rolled back just so, revealing the faint lines of tension in his forearms. The conversation sounded serious, something about contract clauses and urgent deadlines. His back was turned, so he didn't notice her approach. She hesitated, not wanting to interrupt. But when he finally ended the call, he turned abruptly, blinking at her as though he'd forgotten she was there. "Good morning," he said, in the clipped, businesslike tone he used for nearly everything. "We need to talk about today's schedule." She nodded, pulling out a stool at the island. "Go on." He set his phone aside. "There's a brunch for the investors at a country club outside the city. We'll be expected to attend. They want to see more of us in a casual setting." She tried to hide her dread. Another event, another day of smiling and performing. "Sure, let me know the time." He studied her for a moment, then turned to pour coffee into a delicate mug. "Before we go, we should also discuss your mother." Donna's heart kicked up. "Why my mother?" "She's bound to wonder where you're getting the money to pay off debts so quickly," Victor said, handing her the coffee. "And if word reaches the investors that your family is clueless about our engagement, it could raise suspicion. We need her on board with our story." A pang of guilt twisted in Donna's chest. Her mother already sensed something was off. She'd been asking subtle questions by text, inquiring about Donna's sudden new wardrobe and the large deposits clearing some of their bills. Donna had brushed off the subject, too afraid to admit the truth. "I'll handle it," she said quietly. Before Victor could respond, the doorbell chimed. Donna arched a brow, not expecting visitors. He walked to answer it, and the instant he opened the door, the energy in the room shifted. A woman stood there, dressed in a tailored suit and high heels, exuding a confident elegance that matched Victor's. Her sharp gaze flicked over him, then swept inside. "Victor," she said, voice cool but tinged with familiarity. "Long time no see." Donna sensed tension creep into Victor's shoulders. "Olivia," he returned, stepping aside with forced politeness. "I wasn't expecting you." She strode in, an expensive bag clutched at her side. Her eyes landed on Donna, who remained seated at the kitchen island, feeling abruptly on display. "So this is your fiancé," Olivia remarked, the corners of her lips curving slightly. She extended a hand toward Donna with an air of patronizing curiosity. "I'm Olivia. Victor and I have history." Donna mustered a polite smile, standing to shake her hand. She wondered if this was Victor's ex-girlfriend or ex-business partner. Maybe both. "Donna," she replied. "Nice to meet you." "That remains to be seen," Olivia said with a silky half-laugh. Victor stepped between them, arms folded. "What do you want, Olivia? I'm in the middle of something." She set her bag down on the counter with a confidence that suggested she'd been here many times before. "I came to talk business. You remember the foreign investors we tried to court a while back before you shut me out?" Her eyes flicked pointedly to Donna, then back to him. "Word travels. I hear you've resurrected the plan but decided to leave me out of the big negotiations." His jaw tightened. "That arrangement ended when you sold off your shares." Olivia let out a scornful laugh. "You forced me to sell. Don't pretend it was my choice." Donna stepped back, instinctively giving them room. It was clear their history was complicated. She felt the tension humming between them, like static electricity in the air. Victor's voice iced over. "I'm not having this argument again. If you're here to cause trouble—" "Trouble?" Olivia's sharp gaze flicked to Donna, sizing her up. "I see you found a convenient way to impress the investors. A sudden engagement is a bit predictable, don't you think?" She paused, letting the implication hang. "How much does she know about what happened with our old deal?" Donna's heart pounded. She hated the sense that she was a pawn in their old rivalry. She glanced at Victor, who looked ready to forcibly remove Olivia if necessary. The notion frightened her. He'd never looked so menacing. With a thin smile, Olivia turned her attention directly on Donna. "Did he tell you about the fiasco we had with those same foreign backers? And how a personal scandal nearly ruined everything?" Donna felt a spike of alarm. She had no clue what Olivia was talking about, but the words personal scandal hung ominously in the air. "No," she said carefully. Victor all but growled. "Enough. My business with you was concluded months ago, and I'm not about to revisit it. Get out." Olivia's smirk only grew. "No wonder you're so desperate for investors now. Maybe that's why you've staged this entire engagement. Well, if you decide you want a real solution, you know where to find me." She picked up her bag, then stopped just shy of the door to glance over her shoulder at Donna. "A little advice. Be careful what you get dragged into. Sometimes the price you pay is far greater than you realize." With that, she swept out. The door clicked behind her, leaving the penthouse reeling with unresolved tension. Donna slowly let out the breath she'd been holding. Victor rubbed a hand over his face, anger rolling off him in waves. "She thrives on stirring trouble," he muttered. "Ignore her." Hard to ignore, Donna thought. She set down her coffee mug, her appetite for brunch evaporating. "So you had a previous deal with her? Something about the same investors we're courting now?" He turned away, pacing near the windows. "We used to be business partners. It ended badly. Olivia wanted more control than she deserved, so I forced her out. He paused, then added grudgingly, "She's not above using personal dirt to sabotage me if it means a profitable advantage." Donna tried to steady her thoughts. She mentioned a scandal. Was it serious? He wouldn't meet her eyes. It was a misunderstanding. His clipped tone warned her not to pry further, but her curiosity flared. She wrapped her arms around herself, uneasy. If she threatens to expose something, it could jeopardize your investor deal and everything we've built with this fake engagement. He shook his head, turning to face her. "It won't happen. I have it under control." She wanted to believe him, but the tension in his posture told a different story. Her mind flashed to all the secrets, the half-truths, and the way Victor insisted on control at every step. Maybe Olivia wasn't bluffing. Maybe there really was a story that could shatter their carefully constructed facade. He moved to the kitchen island, picking up his phone with a harsh exhale. "We don't have time to dwell on Olivia's theatrics. The investors are expecting us at the club soon. We need to present ourselves as a united front." Donna forced a nod, but Olivia's parting words lingered in her mind. "Sometimes the price you pay is far greater than you realize." Part of her worried that she'd already paid too high a price, her honesty, her sense of control. And now, apparently, she might have to lie to her mother as well, just to maintain this illusion. They left the penthouse soon after, slipping into the waiting car. Throughout the drive, Victor tapped on his phone, presumably tying up loose ends before their brunch. Donna stared out the window, her thoughts swirling. She wondered if a crack had formed in their scheme, one that Olivia could exploit. And what would happen if the investors discovered that not only was their engagement fake, but that Victor had skeletons in his closet big enough to scare off even a seasoned partner? When they arrived at the country club, the facade of normalcy resumed. Victor guided her through manicured gardens, introducing her to more well-heeled individuals who offered gracious small talk. She made the expected remarks, all too aware that behind her pleasant smile lay a growing sense of unease. As the brunch wore on, Donna kept replaying the encounter with Olivia in her mind. Each time she recalled the woman's pointed questions, a thread of anxiety tugged at her. She didn't know which was worse, that Olivia clearly had history with Victor, or that she believed she still had leverage over him. A few hours later, they were once again in a car headed back to the penthouse. The investors, for now, seemed placated, but Donna's thoughts were far from settled. She couldn't escape the feeling that something else lurked behind Victor's guarded exterior, a secret bigger than a lost business deal. She was starting to realize that living with him, playing the role of his fiancé, meant stepping deeper into a web of hidden truths. She looked over at Victor, who appeared lost in thought, jaw set tight. How much did he plan to hide from her, even as she risked her own credibility for his sake? He caught her staring. For a moment, neither spoke, as if words couldn't bridge the distance between them. Finally, he cleared his throat and returned his attention to the fleeting cityscape outside. Donna turned to gaze out her own window, heart tangled with questions. Olivia's final warning echoed in her mind, reminding her that once secrets surface, no contract or act of will can bury them again. She suspected Victor's world held more darkness than she had imagined, and that her place in it was far from secure. That night she lay awake in the penthouse guest room, her eyes tracing the patterns of streetlight on the ceiling. She tried to recall the exact look on Victor's face when Olivia confronted him. Anger, yes, but also a flicker of something that might have been fear. She was certain now that there was a side to him she hadn't yet seen, a side that could unravel their deal if it came to light. In the silence, her phone vibrated with a text from her mother, once more asking how she was affording such nice things. Donna responded with a vague assurance that her new job paid well, feeling her chest tighten at the lie. Somehow, that deception was almost as heavy as the secrets swirling around Victor. She set her phone aside, breath unsteady. A creeping thought formed at the back of her mind. If Victor could hide a whole scandal with Olivia, What else might he be concealing? She had agreed to this plan to save her mother's home, but was she risking more than she ever realized? Sleep refused to come. She stared at the clock, the minutes bleeding into hours. The hush of the penthouse corridors did nothing to soothe her. Instead, it made the doubts in her mind echo louder. She wondered how much longer she could keep up the act without demanding the truth. And what would she do if the truth turned out to be something far more dangerous than a broken partnership? Finally, she exhaled a shaky sigh, rolling onto her side. The question gnawed at her, refusing to be silenced. Donna wondered if Victor was hiding something deeper than a mere grudge or a lost business venture, and whether the price of discovering his secrets would be higher than any deal she had made. Donna had barely slept for days, yet the morning light found her wide awake, staring at the tall windows in the penthouse guest room. Each new day seemed to unravel more complexities and half-truths. Somewhere in Victor's meticulously organized world, she felt there was a secret far bigger than just a feud with his former partner. Olivia's ominous visit had confirmed as much. He was hiding something, and whatever it was had rattled him more deeply than he cared to admit. Still unsettled by Olivia's parting words, Donna resolved to pay closer attention. She decided she wouldn't run away. Not yet. If she was to keep up this engagement act, she needed to know exactly what she was involved in. She had risked her dignity, her integrity. She at least deserved the truth. Late in the morning, Donna found herself flipping through a thick binder of Victor's business reports she'd discovered on a side table in the living room. She wasn't sure if she should be snooping, but curiosity drove her. Most of it read like jargon: assets, returns, expansion plans. But then she saw references to heavy debts from years past. The pages included cryptic notes about urgent cash infusions and hurried last-minute meetings with investors. Before she could decipher more, Victor's voice cut through the silence. "Looking for something?" She startled, nearly dropping the binder. He stood near the hallway, arms crossed, a slight edge to his gaze. She realized how incriminating she looked. "I'm sorry," she managed. "I was just trying to understand what you do, seeing as I'm supposedly your fiancé." He strode over, expression guarded. Gently but firmly, he eased the binder from her hands. "You won't find the answers you're looking for in these pages." She studied his face, picking up a hint of exhaustion around his eyes. "Then where will I find them? Yesterday, Olivia showed up out of nowhere, hinting at secrets that could ruin everything. Doesn't that worry you?" His jaw tensed. "My focus is on finalizing the investors' deal. Everything else is a distraction, including Olivia." He sounded more defensive than convincing. Donna wanted to push further, but the tight set of his shoulders warned her off. "If you don't trust me with whatever's going on," she said, "then at least don't expect me to stand by blindly. I can't keep lying to everyone, including my mother, without knowing what's at stake." His stare lingered on her, as if measuring whether she could be trusted. Finally, he set the binder aside. "I'm meeting with the investors at a private dinner tonight," he said. "They've decided to bring part of their legal team, which means more scrutiny. I need you there." She sighed, the weight of her unresolved questions pressing harder. "Fine, but I can't keep doing this if you keep me in the dark." She allowed the corners of her mouth to pull tight in frustration. "All I'm asking for is some honesty." He looked away. "After this dinner, maybe we'll have time to talk." She recognized it as a concession, however small. Though unsatisfied, she nodded. "All right, after the dinner." They parted ways, and Donna spent the rest of the afternoon trying to calm her nerves. She forced herself to eat a little lunch, though her stomach had been acting strange for a few days. Stress, she assumed. Still, a wave of lightheadedness hit her while she was tidying up her room, forcing her to sit on the edge of the bed until the dizzy spell passed. She almost called a doctor, but the phone rang. Victor's assistant confirming her fitting for the evening, and she let herself be whisked back into the unstoppable current of obligations. As evening approached, she dressed in another elegant gown that felt more like a costume than ever. Victor, polished in a tailored suit, offered his arm as usual. They descended to the car in silence, tension coiled between them. Outside, the sky had darkened into a deep blue, city lights flickering on. Once again, Donna found herself speeding through streets that glowed with wealth and promise, while her own life felt increasingly off balance. They arrived at a subdued, high-end restaurant. The host directed them to a private room in the back, where the investors were waiting around an oval table. An array of suited men and women greeted them with polite smiles. Soft music played overhead, and the clink of fine china underscored the hush of the space. The conversation revolved around supply chains, capital investment, and expansions. Donna contributed little, quietly sipping water and trying to mask another wave of queasiness. She couldn't focus on the complicated business jargon, though she tried to maintain a smile whenever someone glanced her way. Victor occasionally brushed his hand against hers under the table in a display of scripted affection, but she sensed his distraction. Halfway through the meal, a subtle shift spread through the room. One of the investors, a sharp-eyed older gentleman, began asking pointed questions about Victor's personal life. He implied that certain rumors, Donna guessed from Olivia, had reached his ears. Suspicion danced in his words, challenging Victor's stability and the authenticity of their engagement. Donna felt her pulse race. Victor responded smoothly, deflecting concerns with practiced composure. He gestured to Donna, weaving a tender story of their courtship, a mix of invented details and half-truths. She admired how seamlessly he spun the tale, yet part of her bristled at the brazen fabrication. Still, she played her role, smiling softly and adding a few affectionate nods. The older investor listened, expression unreadable, then relented, apparently satisfied. For now. Relief washed over Donna, though her head continued to throb with dull pain. When at last dessert was served, she found she had no appetite. The mere scent of rich chocolate made her stomach churn. She excused herself, stepping outside to catch her breath in a corridor lit by a single overhead lamp. Leaning against the wall, she pressed a hand to her abdomen, perplexed by the persistent waves of nausea. It felt different from plain stress. She tried to pull herself together and return to the room, but as she turned to go, she caught a glimpse of a tall figure in the hallway. Olivia, her posture confident as ever, phone in hand. Their eyes locked. Olivia flashed a triumphant smile. "How sweet to see you here," Olivia purred, stepping closer. "Attending yet another investor soiree, I see." Donna braced herself. "Why are you stalking us?" Olivia gave a low laugh. "Such hostility. I'm simply making sure everything runs smoothly for old time's sake. You have no idea the mess you're in, do you?" Donna's heart pounded. "I don't have time for your cryptic threats." "Don't say I didn't warn you," Olivia said, drawing out the words. "Victor's troubles run deeper than a lost business deal, and when you finally discover the full extent—" "Stop," Donna cut in. "If you want to sabotage him, talk to him. Leave me out of it." Olivia's smile hardened. "I tried. He won't negotiate, but maybe once he realizes I can ruin this entire deal with a single phone call. Well, let's hope he's ready to play fair." She turned on her heel, vanishing into the dark corridor, leaving Donna trembling. Shaken, Donna returned to the private room just as the meeting broke up. Victor noticed her pale face but had no chance to ask questions before the group stood, exchanging handshakes and polite farewells. On the drive back, the tension in the car was thick. He glanced over at her a few times, almost speaking, then changed his mind. She couldn't decide whether she was angry or frightened or both. At the penthouse, she went directly to her room, ignoring the swirl of frustration in Victor's eyes. Her stomach was tied in knots and she felt an ominous flutter of dizziness again. She rummaged in her bag for a bottle of water. It was then her fingertips brushed against something else. a sealed pregnancy test she'd bought on a whim 2 days prior, after a persistent hunch. Her heart stopped. She blinked, remembering the bouts of nausea and dizziness, the odd changes in her appetite. Could it be? She'd told herself it was just stress, but a deeper part of her suspected something else. Her pulse hammered as she slipped into the bathroom and locked the door. Minutes later, the test confirmed her instincts. Pregnant. She sank onto the edge of the bathtub, shock blossoming through every nerve. Tears stung her eyes. She hadn't even considered that all the chaos might lead to this, and never in her wildest dreams had she imagined pregnant would mean twins. But the test kit was clear. She was carrying 2. Time blurred. She wasn't sure how long she sat there, absorbing the news. Her mother's face, Victor's icy demeanor, the looming threat of eviction, Olivia's meddling, everything swarmed her thoughts at once. This changed everything. A baby, and not just 1, 2. She was supposed to be playing fiancé, not actually forging a life. The weight of it pressed on her chest until she could hardly breathe. A faint knock startled her. She heard Victor's voice through the door. "Donna, are you all right?" She swallowed, her throat painfully dry, and unlocked the door. He stood in the doorway, brow furrowed with concern. "You've been in here a while." She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. An entire universe of panic and hope churned inside her, tangling her thoughts. Finally, she clasped his wrist with trembling fingers. "Victor, there's something I have to tell you." His face tensed with worry. "What is it?" Her mind spun, searching for a way to prepare him, to soften this impossible blow. But how did you cushion something like this? She realized that everything was about to change. His business, their arrangement, her life. Maybe it was already too late to turn back. She took a shaky breath, tears threatening to escape. "I'm pregnant," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "With twins." Donna closed her eyes, bracing herself against the bathroom sink as the silence stretched taut between them. She had just dropped a bomb. Twins. The test in her hand was proof that everything had shifted. Victor stared, his normally steady composure cracking around the edges. The walls of the luxurious penthouse felt too tight, too glossy, holding them both in a single moment that threatened to break them. "How?" he finally said, his voice hollow. He lifted a hand to rake through his hair, a gesture of frustration and shock. "We agreed this was a business arrangement. It wasn't supposed to lead to this." She wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. How could she explain? Maybe they had lost themselves in the performance. Maybe it was one too many vulnerable nights, unspoken attractions they both refused to acknowledge. Whatever the chain of events, it was no longer hypothetical. "Things happen," she murmured, swallowing the thick lump in her throat. "Whether we planned it or not." Victor looked like he wanted to pace, but the small space kept him pinned in place. I'm not ready for children, and this engagement was never real," he snapped, heat creeping into his voice. "What do you expect me to do now?" She felt a flare of anger, the sting of his words unraveling the last thread of composure she held. "I expect you to realize there are 2 lives at stake, not just yours or mine. I expect you to remember you wanted me to stay here, to lie for you, to save your precious business deal. And now—" He cut her off with a sharp motion, eyes flashing. "Don't throw that in my face. You've benefited too." Trembling, Donna glanced down at the test kit, the faint lines confirming the reality she had no choice but to face. She had come into this arrangement to save her mother's home, to survive a financial crisis. That crisis felt small now compared to the force of these new circumstances. "I'm not blaming you," she said softly, voice thick with emotion. "But you have to realize, this changes everything." He stared at her, the flicker of panic clear in his eyes. "Then I need time to think." Without another word, he turned and walked out, leaving the door open behind him. She stood in the silence, her pulse throbbing with a mix of hurt and disbelief. Time to think? She was pregnant with twins, and he was worried about thinking. Anger simmered in her veins as she tried to steady her breathing. But beneath the anger lay fear. Fear of raising 2 children alone. Fear of what this meant for their precarious deal. She wondered what she had expected. Some gentle reassurance? A promise that he'd take care of everything? Perhaps that was naive. Eventually, Donna stepped out into the hallway, only to find the penthouse eerily quiet. She searched the living room, the kitchen, but Victor was gone. A faint trace of his cologne lingered in the air, as if he'd rushed out. Her eyes burned with tears. She sank onto the couch, cradling her face in her hands. The weight of the last few months pressed down on her like a physical burden. Fake engagement, endless lies, constant scrutiny. And now this. Hours passed. She didn't see him return. When her phone buzzed, she hoped it was him, but it turned out to be yet another creditor from her past life, though she owed them nothing now. She left it unanswered, too drained to explain or argue. She tried to rest, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept replaying that stricken look on his face when she revealed the pregnancy. By late evening, a quiet knock startled her. She stood, heart pounding, thinking perhaps Victor had returned with some renewed sense of responsibility. Instead, the door swung open to reveal Olivia, stepping in as though she owned the place. "I let myself in," Olivia announced, dangling a key with a smug grin. "You really should watch who you trust." Donna stiffened. "Where did you get that key?" "Victor gave me a spare once," Olivia said, strolling inside and surveying the surroundings as though inspecting her former territory. "Didn't bother to change the locks, I guess." She moved to the marble counter, setting her purse down with a deliberate finality. "We need to talk," she said, eyes flicking over Donna's rumpled appearance. "You look awful. Trouble in paradise?" Donna bristled. "I'm not discussing my relationship with you." Olivia made a mocking, tutting sound. "If you're clinging to the notion that Victor's devoted to you, you're more naive than I thought." She rummaged in her purse, pulling out a folded set of papers. "I came to show him this, but since he's not here, you might find it enlightening. It's a set of documents exposing the depths of his old debts and personal issues, some quite incriminating." Donna's hands clenched into fists. She hated the smug tilt of Olivia's chin, the casual malice in her voice. "What do you want from him?" Olivia snorted. "Simple. I want him to admit I deserve a share of the new investor deal. He forced me out unfairly, and if he refuses, I'll leak every damaging secret I have, ruining his reputation and by extension yours." Her gaze sharpened. "You do realize any scandal would reflect on you, the devoted fiancé." Donna's stomach churned. She was so sick of all these threats, all these manipulations. But as she opened her mouth to fire back, a dizzy wave hit her, forcing her to grip the arm of the couch for support. The pregnancy's unrelenting symptoms refused to let her ignore them, and the stress only made it worse. Olivia, noticing Donna's sudden pallor, narrowed her eyes. "You all right?" Her tone softened, if only a fraction. Donna steadied herself. "I'm fine," she lied. "Get out." A flicker of curiosity, maybe even pity, crossed Olivia's face, then vanished. "Suit yourself," she said, heading for the door. "Let Victor know that if he wants to negotiate, I'll be waiting, but he shouldn't take too long." Then she was gone, leaving Donna trembling. Time crawled forward, and still Victor didn't appear. Donna paced, nerves fraying. She tried calling him, only to get his voicemail. She left no message. What could she say? "Hey, remember how I told you about the twins? Just checking if you're ready to be a father." It sounded ridiculous. Eventually, she couldn't bear the penthouse's oppressive emptiness any longer. She packed a small bag with essentials, letting tears slip down her cheeks as she zipped it shut. She doubted it would matter to him if she left. Maybe it would even be a relief. She scribbled a quick note, unsure if he'd even care to read it, and placed it on the kitchen island, near a vase of white lilies that had wilted without anyone bothering to change the water. Then she slipped into the elevator, descending to ground level. The rush of city lights and noise greeted her, piercing after days holed up in Victor's controlled domain. She hailed a taxi and gave the driver her mother's address, her voice shaking only slightly. The idea of explaining her pregnancy, her entire twisted situation, felt insurmountable, but she had nowhere else to go. When she arrived, her mother flung the door open, concern etched on her features. "Donna, honey, are you okay?" She glanced past her daughter, as if expecting Victor to appear with fancy gifts or slick explanations. Donna tried to answer, but tears came instead. She crumpled in her mother's arms, the full weight of the last months crashing down at once. "It's all falling apart," she managed between sobs. "Everything I did to save the house, to keep us afloat. I just don't know what to do anymore." Her mother, stunned, led her inside and offered a seat on the worn living room couch. Familiar surroundings brought a small measure of comfort, but the heartbreak remained. Donna couldn't hide her tears when her mother gently asked what had happened. And so, through halting words, she admitted the pregnancy, the farce of an engagement, the avalanche of secrets. Though her mother's eyes widened with shock, she never once let go of Donna's hand. Outside, the day grew dark. Meanwhile, Donna sat at the kitchen table, unable to shake the feeling that she had lost not just a precarious arrangement, but also any respect she might have had for Victor. She remembered how he'd turned cold at the news, how he had slipped out without saying a word. That might have been the final blow to a charade already fraying at every edge. Days passed in a blur of tears and uncertainty. Donna ignored calls from unknown numbers, fearing they might be reporters or, worse, Olivia with fresh threats. The emptiness of having walked away from the penthouse weighed on her. She'd never liked living under someone else's roof, but she also hated the abruptness of this ending. She felt battered by conflicting emotions, anger at Victor's selfishness, grief for a future that might never be, and a fragile hope that she could pick up the pieces on her own. While Donna battled her own storm, Victor sat alone in his office, blinds drawn against the night sky. His phone lay silent on the desk, no new messages from Donna. In one of the drawers, an old family ring he'd once considered offering as part of the official proposal glinted under the fluorescent light. He had never planned to truly propose, but a small part of him had kept it anyway, as though some deeper feeling he refused to name had guided him. With trembling hands, he picked it up, turning it over and over in his fingers. Memories of Donna flooded his mind. Her determined gaze, her wary smiles, even her vulnerable confession about the twins. Now she was gone, and so was the thin veneer of control he'd tried to maintain. He closed his fist around the ring, struggling to make sense of his next move. In a rush of frustration, he slammed the drawer shut. The echo reverberated through the silent office as though punctuating his solitary crisis. Staring at the closed drawer, he realized he had reached a tipping point. He couldn't turn back time, and he couldn't pretend anymore. Some decisions were irreversible, and if he didn't act, he'd lose everything that mattered, even if it had started as a business arrangement. Victor clenched his jaw, heart hammering, the ring still pressed in his hand. He was resolved to fix this somehow, but he had no idea where to begin. Donna woke up to the dim glow of dawn seeping through the window curtains in her mother's living room. She hadn't slept well, slumped on the old sofa with a thin blanket. Despite the warm familiarity of being back in her childhood home, her heart felt burdened by raw sadness. Each morning since she'd left Victor's penthouse, she woke to a fresh wave of regret and confusion. She touched her stomach gently, remembering the moment she'd realized she was carrying twins, the joy quickly overshadowed by Victor's stunned retreat. She rose, stretched her stiff muscles, and looked around. The house still carried the scent of her mother's cooking and the faint note of vanilla that had always felt so comforting. But even this safe place couldn't shield her from the ache inside. She heard soft footsteps from the hallway. Her mother appeared, robe drawn tight, brows furrowed with concern. "Morning, sweetheart," she said quietly. "How are you feeling?" Donna forced a smile. "A bit better," she lied. "You?" Her mother sighed, motioning for Donna to sit at the small kitchen table. "I worry about you. Everything that happened. This fiancé or ex-fiancé. I don't know how to help." She settled into a chair across from Donna, resting a gentle hand on her daughter's arm. "All I can do is be here. You know that." Tears threatened to well in Donna's eyes. She squeezed her mother's hand in response. "That's more than enough," she whispered. "I just need time to figure out what comes next." Before her mother could reply, a sudden knock startled them both. Donna's breath caught. She wasn't sure if she was ready to see anyone, particularly not if it was Victor. But when she peeked through the thin curtain by the front window, she saw no sign of his polished presence. Instead, the visitor turned out to be a courier in a crisp uniform, holding an envelope. Donna opened the door tentatively. "Yes? I have legal documents for you, miss," the courier said, handing over a white packet. He asked for a quick signature and then departed, leaving Donna to stare at the unfamiliar return address. She took it to the kitchen, curiosity mingling with dread. "What's that?" her mother asked, noticing Donna's anxious expression. Donna broke the seal. Her eyes scanned the papers, growing wide. It was an official notice confirming that her mother's house, once under the threat of final eviction, had been bought out of foreclosure. The name listed as the property's new owner was Donna's. She nearly dropped the pages in disbelief. "I don't understand," she stammered. "This says the house is fully paid off. No debts left." Her mother looked equally stunned. "Paid off? By who?" Donna traced her eyes over the lines of text until she found a clue. At the bottom, she recognized Victor's signature. He was the one who'd orchestrated the purchase, then transferred it into Donna's name. She pressed her lips together, a swirl of emotions tightening her chest. So he had saved the house after all, even after she'd left him and everything seemed broken beyond repair. Her mother watched the tears gathering in Donna's eyes. "Did he do this?" she asked softly. Donna nodded, biting her lower lip. "It must have been him." She exhaled shakily. I don't know what it means." Her mother rose, placing her hands on Donna's shoulders. "Maybe he's trying to make things right. But that's a question only he can answer, dear." Donna clenched the envelope, feeling a mixture of gratitude and lingering hurt. She wanted to believe Victor's gesture might be a sign of genuine remorse or caring, but she couldn't forget how he'd walked away when she needed him most. Later that afternoon, while Donna was tidying up old boxes in the back room, her phone rang. She almost ignored it, but the number was Victor's. Her heart thundered. She let it ring 3 times, debating. Finally, she swiped to answer, pressing the device to her ear in silence. His breath caught on the other end. "Donna?" he asked quietly. She struggled to keep her voice steady. "Yes." He hesitated. I know you received those documents. I wanted to make sure. It's your mother's house, paid in full." She sank onto a nearby chair, surrounded by musty cardboard boxes filled with old memories. "You didn't have to do that. I left you. I walked out." He sighed. "I did it because it was the right thing. You deserve security, especially now." She pressed her free hand to her abdomen. The swirl of nausea and worry that had accompanied her pregnancy eased just a little, replaced by a cautious warmth. "Thank you," she said softly. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll see me," he pleaded. "I'd like to talk. No pressure, just give me a chance to explain." She closed her eyes, recalling the heartbreak of his initial reaction. But she also remembered his shock, the stress he was under, the hints of vulnerability she'd seen behind his stoic mask. After a moment's thought, she agreed. "All right. They arranged to meet at a quiet park on the outskirts of the city, a neutral space away from the penthouse or her mother's home. When Donna arrived, clutching the collar of her coat against the chilly breeze, she spotted him standing near a patch of trees. He looked tired, eyes rimmed with shadows, hair disheveled as though he'd run a hand through it too many times. She approached slowly, heart hammering. Neither of them spoke at first. The distant sound of children playing drifted through the crisp air, laughter echoing around them. "Thank you for coming," Victor said, hands shoved in his coat pockets. I owe you an apology." She nodded, hugging her coat tighter. "I'd say that's a start." He took a breath, gaze landing on the worn path beneath their feet. "When you told me about the twins, I panicked. My mind went back to every failure in my life, how I barely held my business together, how a scandal nearly ruined me. Suddenly, the idea of fatherhood terrified me. I needed to run." Donna's eyes misted over. "Do you think it wasn't terrifying for me? This was never part of my plan either, but I didn't get the choice to just walk away." He swallowed, finally meeting her gaze. "You're right. I was selfish. Everything you went through, lying, playing the perfect fiancé, living under constant scrutiny, was all for my sake. And I shut down exactly when I should have stood by you. I hate myself for that." She dropped her eyes. A long silence passed while she tried to gather her thoughts, uncertain if she could trust his remorse. The memory of him fleeing the penthouse gnawed at her. He inched closer, producing a small envelope from his coat pocket. "This is more paperwork, legal, but personal. I want to ensure you and the twins have everything you need, now and in the future. Even if—" He paused, breath wavering. "Even if you don't want me around, I want the three of you cared for." She stared at the envelope, overcome by a rush of conflicting emotions. Anger, sorrow, gratitude, and a faint hope. "What if I don't want just your money?" she whispered. "What if I want a partner who won't run at the first sign of trouble?" His face twisted, a flicker of pain in his eyes. "I understand if you can't forgive me, but if there's a chance, any chance, I'd like to be there. I'd like to try to be the father they deserve." Tears slid down her cheeks, and she brushed them aside. "Don't make promises you won't keep." He reached out, trembling fingers grazing her hand. "I'll prove it," he said, voice raw. "You don't have to believe me right now, but let me earn back your trust. I'll do whatever it takes." She studied him, the man who once demanded she fake a relationship for the sake of investors. The same man who had just paid off her mother's house, who stood before her, looking as though the future weighed on him like an impossible mountain. She saw his humility, his shame, and an earnest desire to change. Softly, she nodded, though fear still lingered. "I want to believe you." He exhaled shakily. "One more thing," he whispered, dipping a hand into his coat's inner pocket. He withdrew a small box. "I was keeping this because, well, I didn't know if I'd ever really use it. But now, I don't want to spend another minute lying to the world. Or to us." Donna's pulse thundered. She watched, speechless, as he opened the lid to reveal an elegant ring gleaming in the pale autumn sunlight. "I know we started as an arrangement," he said, voice trembling. "But if you'll have me, if you'll let me try, I'd like to do this for real. No contract, no lies, just us." Warm tears blurred her vision of the ring. She could hardly speak, torn between 1,000 fears and the flutter of hope rising in her chest. After a moment, she closed her eyes, recalling her mother's unwavering presence, the flutter of life in her belly, and the vulnerable man standing before her. In that stillness, she realized her heart had already begun to forgive. She lifted her gaze to his, tears shining. "Yes," she whispered, "but we need to take this slowly. There's so much we have to fix." He nodded, relief mixing with cautious joy in his eyes. We'll take it one step at a time." They embraced under the canopy of rustling leaves, and for a moment the noise of the world receded. She felt his heart pounding, matching the rhythm of her own, a tender promise of a different future than the one they'd imagined. A future shaped by truth, shared struggle, and maybe, even in the midst of so much uncertainty, love. Days turned into weeks of quiet rebuilding. Victor used every contact he had to stabilize his deal without more deception, proving he was willing to walk an honest path. Donna began to share bits of her pregnancy journey with him, noticing his awe at the small changes. A doctor's appointment, the sound of the heartbeat. Though they still argued at times, each day brought them a step closer to genuine trust. When the new investor arrangement was finally announced, it caused only a short stir. The rumors of a fake engagement faded in the wake of Victor's candid approach about his business. The press still snapped photos of them at events, Donna with a small but visible bump, Victor hovering protectively at her side. But those images now carried a ring of truth. Their once fabricated relationship had taken root in reality. One morning, Donna and her mother strolled around the front garden of the house, Donna's house, now hers by name and by deed. In the distance, she spotted Victor talking animatedly on the phone, a notebook tucked under his arm. He turned, saw her, and lifted a hand in a warm wave. She smiled, pressing a palm to her belly, where the twins' gentle kicks reminded her of the life she was nurturing. She still didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt at peace. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was something better, real, flawed, a bond that had survived the lies and betrayals and now stood a chance of becoming something lasting. She took a deep breath, grateful for second chances. Standing by the garden gate, she watched Victor finish his call and start toward her, a fondness in his eyes that made her heart flutter. She thought back to how this all began, with cold transactions, urgent debts, and a staged engagement. But if there was one thing she had learned, it was that no contract could measure the worth of genuine commitment. He stopped by her side, slid an arm around her waist, and pressed a gentle kiss to her temple. She leaned into him, relishing the warmth of his presence, and as her mother looked on with teary-eyed approval, Donna whispered the truth that now bound them closer than any legal document ever could. "When everything began as business," she said softly, "no one imagined that love would become the most precious profit." If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.